Hi YouTubers, this is Gil again. So for today, I'm visiting my family in San Diego. This is Dabney Street near Mira Mesa Street. As you can see right here. I don't know how well it shows, but well, anyway, so for this video I'm gonna be talking about whether I really do miss the 80s or I mean, how we call it, or was the 80s really better? A lot of you may say, I mean, I get a lot of posts on my first video there. Usually it's gonna be that 10 freeway video or the video for the life in the 80s, the very first tape, or the one that I have a lot of views on. I get a very common comment that I get is life was so much better then, more simpler, that type of thing. That is a very common comment that I get there. Or life was much better. That's another common comment that I get. Life was so much better. And or another question I commonly get is, do I miss the 80s? Well, I'm going to tell you the answers to all of this in this video. Okay, first item of business here. The first question I'm going to answer once and for all, so to speak. Well, I mean, I don't mind. I don't care about answering this question all the time, but I mean, this will be a good video for the ultimate answer to the question that I very commonly get. Do I miss the 80s? Well, if I could give you a quick answer to that, I mean, I'm neutral. I would say that I'm neutral. But the thing is that when we're talking about whether we miss the 80s or not, we're talking about like what parts of it, or what was it about the 80s that we missed, or that I miss, or that I don't miss. Well, of course, there's going to be some things that I honestly don't miss about the 80s, though, really. There's certain things that I don't miss, and there's certain things that I do miss about the 80s. Now, if I'm going to talk about... yeah, hang on. So, for the common question that I get, do I miss the 80s? I would say, overall, I'm neutral about it. But I could talk about the things that I do miss off the bat about the 80s. Well, the things that I could say that I do miss is, I think, kind of like the only thing that I can think of is just the fact that, I mean, it's like people. I guess people in general. That's basically everything about the 80s that I miss or don't miss. But the people, you know, back in the 80s, people were more like laid back and more down to earth back then. Because, I mean, back in the time, so like I say, they were more laid back, but I think more because one of the reasons for it is because it was fewer people living here in my area anyway. Right now, you know, this is San Diego, but I live in San Bernardino, and I think like in that area, like Los Angeles area, well, this is where all my videos took place in 30 years ago. You know, the area was less busy back then. And then the laws were more lenient back then too, or the laws and rules and everything was like more lenient and just more kickback. You know, they took it easy. You know, like the laws and rules and but it's not so much the laws and stuff. It's the rules of society. You know, like how people are these days. You know, people these days, they're the people. They are like they're not kickback, you know. They get paranoid, you know, so to speak. You know, the people are like more paranoid, you know, like, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about paranoid, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about like when it comes to doing our normal things, You know, some people get paranoid over nothing, you know, like for an example. My example is a video camera, you know, like if I'm making a video out in the public like I used to do back in the 80s decade, when I would make a video in the public using my phone, like in a store parking lot or whatever, people trip out on me, you know, people will trip out. And people will have the tendency to want to call the cops on me, you know, shit. What the hell is that, man? Everything that we do, and then that can go with everything else that we do. Like if I pet the dog a certain way, people get all stupid about it, man. Come on, man. You guys need to kick back, man. I mean, like, you guys gotta chill. You gotta chill a little there, you know? If I could say that's what I would miss about the 80s, it was not like that in the 80s. People were more chill. People did not get all paranoid over nothing, you know, like they do today. Or they didn't trip out and want to try to call cops on me for making a video in the public or whatever, or anything like that, you know. Everything that we do, I mean, people have the tendency to want to try to find something to get me in trouble for, you know. But back in the 80s, they were more friendly, you know. People were more laid back and more kickback, you know. They were more chill, you know. People were chill. I mean, they would just go about their own business, you know. So, I mean, that's basically the only thing that I have to say that I do miss about the 80s, you know. How the people's attitudes were better back then. Not that I'm saying that they're not right now, but many people right now, they're good. I mean, they're good people, you know. But the thing is, I mean, I think perhaps the reason why we're noticing all these things about people, how they are, and they're not chill, is because of the internet. It's because we see more of it on the internet since we're on the internet. But back then, when we did not have all the internet, it was only that set amount of people that we were immediately able to interact with, you know. Like with the social media, it's the whole world that we're interacting with, and it's easier for someone to troll you on the internet than out in the open street. Because in the open, like if we're talking about no internet, and if we're talking about groups, you had to do everything in person. We did everything in person during the 80s. So people like who wants to troll really could not hide themselves trolling in the public areas or in the public places, you know. But in the internet, they could feel more comfortable. See, that's the little difference. Maybe there probably was trolls. There probably was paranoid people during the 80s, except the only thing is that we were not really exposed to them that easily, because, you know, we did not have the social media to write down all this stuff. So, I mean, but over here, like back in the 80s, people were a little more chill, or, I mean, they were chill. But, I mean, because one of the reasons, too, is because it was less crowded back then, too. I mean, it was not as busy, or there's not as many people living over here, you know. So, anyway, but, I mean, if I'm going to talk about crowd, I mean, the people in general, I mean, they were more chill back then. But, I mean, but then again, it was fewer people interacting that we were able to interact with, since it was just that specific group, like in a club or something. We did not have the social media to like where the whole world can see you, you know, like where you're exposed to many more people out in the world, you know. But anyway, and if I could talk about the other part that I do miss about the 80s, I mean, I would say it's just the other part of the same subject, you know, people, you know, like, well, about the fact that since we didn't have cell phones or internet or Xbox or these sophisticated games, we did have video games back then, but they were not like these Xboxes. They weren't sophisticated with like PlayStation 4 and Xboxes, you know, like of today, you know, 2019. So they were not sophisticated. They're just simple games that we plug in, and Well, back in the day, since we didn't have any internet or social media, it forced us to go out and just interact with people and just stop, like, skip the phone in our minds and just talk to the person, instead. Well, we didn't have phones back then, we didn't have cellular phones or internet back then. So, the nice thing about the 80s was that we were all forced to skip the phone. You just put away that iPad, put away the internet, put away the phone and just talk to you, talk to me, Back then, that's how it was, and so we were forced. So with the fact that, the 80s was great for that. When you're talking about, like when you're talking about like putting away the phone and just talk to the person rather than being so much focused on your phone, like in the 80s we didn't have the phones, and so all we were able to do is just forcefully, we were forced to have to talk to other people and interact and go out and do things like go to the park and play ball. We were forced to do that, but we lived with it. We lived, we lived with that back then. So, that's what I could say, what I would miss about the 80s, it's the only thing that I say that I really honestly miss. It's to do with the people and society and how the people's habits, and then of course the laws, like the laws are more of a bitch these days about messing. It's mostly like the cars, like smog or registration or whatever. It's to do with the road, and it's to do with, like the legal aspects of the cars and like smogging especially, like it's more of an ass, or the other part that's really bad about this aspect of the 80s is the laws. Like everything is, like the tickets and everything is a lot more expensive. Not that I had problems with them lately, but the tickets and everything, the laws, like getting in trouble with the laws, is a lot more expensive now than it was back then, and they really get on you on your driving record too. Not like before, like they were a little more easier. So all in all, that's what I would say, what I miss. Do I miss the 80s? I would say in some aspects, yes, I do. And that what I just talked about is what I miss. I would say it was less crowded. That's about it. But everything else, I'm neutral about it. But you know what? It's like, in all honesty, like, do I miss the 80s on everything else? Well, I would say probably not. I would say I'm neutral or I'm not. I don't miss like many aspects of the 80s. Like one of the aspects that I don't miss is like the prices of electronics. That's what I don't miss. The prices of electronics, and the other things that I don't miss for sure is the wages. Is the sucky ass wages. It's what I don't miss about the 80s, because when I first started in my job, when I had my first job in 1987 as a dishwasher, my wage was $3.35 an hour, and I was just happy to get a job, because it gave me an opportunity to save some money to buy stuff I really wanted, which included that video camera, the full-size VHS camcorder, which I had to save, which I had to have the challenge to save $1,000 to buy that camcorder. So, having my first job, being so happy to get a job, having my first job, making $3.35 an hour, now I was able to go save $1,000. I could do my best to save the $1,000 to buy the camcorder that I really want so badly. So, those two things I don't miss. The prices of electronics, it's insane, Prices of electronics was a little exorbitant back then, It was unfair. It was unfair for me, back then, Electronics, like camcorder, like a video camera was one of the most expensive electronic items out there, like camcorders and video cameras. Very expensive, $1,000 for a nice one. They had a camcorder for like $500 back then, but to make $3.35 an hour, you know, like for the minimum wage. And then other things. What's another thing that I could say that I don't miss? Well, I mean, it's just it's mostly the prices of electronics and the sucky ass wages are the things that I don't miss. So, I mean, if you're gonna get my answer, my all-in-all answer about whether I miss the 80s or not, the complete answer to that, it's half and half, so to speak. It's just some parts about it or some aspects about it that I miss, and other aspects I don't. So it's kind of like neutral overall. So sort of like overall neutral. Because you figure, you know, like there are some things that were great about the 80s. And there was some things that just wasn't so great about the 80s, you know, it really wasn't. So, I mean, and then a lot of you may ask me like, how I call it, do I wish I could go back to the 80s, or do I wish I could go back and live there again? And then, well, the answer to that question, I mean, I could probably honestly say no, because, I mean, although the people aspect and the attitudes of people were great, but everything else, it kind of outweighs every other, all the other benefits today versus 80s outweighs the benefits that were in the 80s. But, you know, the benefits of today, when it comes to people, I mean, it's not that people are bad today. It's just, you just have to look around. You have to find the right kind of people to hang out with today, you know. But if you're talking about in the general public, you're going to come around a lot of people being into their phones, and that's a fact, and there's nothing that can change that. There's no way to change that. But the best thing I could say is just look for people that are like what you like, you know, like the ones that are not paying too much attention to their phones or whatever. I mean, there's people out there. So, I mean, the best thing to do is to look for them, you know, look for them. So, I mean, so this video that basically talked about, like, do I miss the 80s or do I not? So you already got the answer there. So it's like, I would say it's half and half, I would say. But like I say, overall, I don't exactly. I mean, I don't necessarily wish I could go back. But, I mean, now, if we're talking about things that I like about today versus 80s, you know, like the quick things that I like about today, why I'm neutral. If you're gonna talk about why I'm neutral about, like, wishing I was in the 80s again, or going back to wishing I could go back, well, one of the main reasons is for being neutral about it, or not wanting to go back, because of today's very convenient technology. You know, the technology of today is really good. You know, I mean, I love how, I mean, I'm able to do everything online. Like, I'm able to do banking, and I'm able to do just about everything online, you know. And then one of the big aspects about this is about online or the internet is the fact that I'm, when it comes to shopping, especially, like whenever it comes to buying that certain thing that I want, and I don't have to hop stores to find those things that I want. Like, I can immediately get it on eBay. I mean, those are some of the things that first comes to my mind that makes me love today compared to back then. Because back in the 80s, like, if, for an example, a new record came out or something, or a new game or whatever, if something new came out, we had to rush to the store, and we had to take the chance of that thing being out of stock. I mean, it was like the case with some games from, like, Genesis games, you know, like, I would always hop stores to buy these certain new release games, and they would be out of stock on them, you know. And if you want to avoid the hassle of hopping stores for that certain record that you want, or like if you went to a store and you just can't find the album that you really want, you just, like, back then, you know, we were out of luck if we were back in the 80s, if we were in the 80s looking for that record that we just can't find, we are out of luck. We would just have to keep hopping stores. But with today's time, I just simply go to eBay and order it and just wait. I mean, that's what I like about today. And of course, I like how I can do everything online, you know. I mean, do everything like, and then the other thing that's great about today's internet is that whenever I have any imaginable question, I just go online and ask it, you know. Or if I have a problem with my car, I go online and figure out like what everybody else is doing. Like, I mean, a lot of times the internet is your friend when it comes to working on cars or anything, you know. Like whenever you have something that you need to fix, like an appliance or refrigerator, whatever, cars, especially cars, you know, like we have a problem with the car, like a check engine light on, and then we go to YouTube and find out what others did to turn off that problem or to fix the problem, and that's really, really, really helpful. Back in the 80s, we could not do that, you know. That's the thing that makes me not want to go back. I don't want to go back to the 80s because we had to be dependent on either our knowledge, or we had to go through our books, or we had to hope to know somebody, but shit, that was really hard. We had to do everything on our own, you know, not to mention that all of the cars did not have these OBD2 systems to help us pinpoint what the problem is, you know, because like the cars, you know, like cars back then, if we had a problem with the car, we had to actually, I tell you, I mean, that's the best part about today versus back then, you know, like internet is your best friend when it comes to things like that, you know, like working on your car, or whenever you have something that you need to do, or whenever you have a project that you need to do, you just go to the internet for your help. But in the 80s, I mean, if we had a car that we needed to work on, I mean, we had no choice but to figure it out on our own, or we had to take it to a mechanic if we didn't know enough about it, you know. And this was the case for me going all through until even the early 2000s, you know. I mean, the internet did not become mainstream for me until like just in the last 10 years, you know, like in the last 10 years, you know. Anyway, and then of course in the 80s, I mean, we didn't have all this help. We did not have the help with the internet, you know. And then like I said, with the cars back then, they didn't have these OBD2 systems where you could just use a scanner to check those cars. Well, some of the cars of the 80s had scanners, but it was a specific scanner for specific cars. Well, anyway, so that's the aspect of the 80s that I don't care for coming back to, you know. Like, then of course the convenience of the phones, you know, cellular phones. I mean, although people are pretty abusive with the Facebook and all that shit, and then that's where you guys don't like it, like about the fact that people are putting so much attention to the phones. And well, but you know, I mean, with all that, I mean, it could be bad, but the good part about the phones is the convenience of having a phone, being able to call anywhere you are, rather than back in the 80s you had to be at home to make a call, and you had to be secluded in that room, you know, I mean, back then. So, I mean, like I say, the technology parts, I mean, and then of course, and then the other thing that's great about today is just the fact that electronics have gone down far less. And that's what, I mean, like the technology, the electronics are much better off. Like video cameras, for an example. Camcorder, you could buy this badass HD camcorder for like $200 or less right now. But, and then other things too, like, you know, like, what do you call it? Like TVs, like HD TVs, and on top of all that, the wages. Now check out the wages. The minimum wage is now over here in California is $12 an hour. So the minimum wage, it's not like imagine that. I mean, well, I think it just went up to $12, but I think it's 11 or well, right now it's 12. But back then, you know, shit. The part that I definitely don't want to go back to the 80s for is the wages, you know. The wages. It's much better off now than they were back then, you know. I tell you. So wages, better wages, and electronics being a fraction of the cost and being 5 times the sophistication. I tell you, I mean, so there you have it. I mean, the answer to this, I would say, I mean, I'm neutral, but I would say, do I miss the 80s? I would say I'm neutral overall. But I mean, and would I want to go back to the 80s? I would say no. I would not want to go back because I don't want to take away the convenience of today's technology and the sophistication of like today's stuff, electronics, especially video cameras. And then now we have flying cameras, the drones, you know, these drones that can shoot 4K video. I mean, the things that we have today for the things that are really affordable. I mean, and things that we can do today that we could not do, that we can only dream of back then, you know, I tell you. So there you have it. So that's the ultimate answer to. So this will conclude to this video, and for my next video, it'll be talking about. I'm going to be talking about like, was it really better in the 80s? Was it really better? Many of you may think that the 80s was better, than the life was better back then. Well, this next video, well, I guess might as well talk about it in this video, well, anyway, because it's probably not going to be a long subject. But anyway, we're going to talk about, was it really better? Was life really better in the 80s than it was? Well, my say about this, I mean, like, if I could say what was better, is that people, like I say, like, were more like, how we call it? Like I say, they were laid back, but the thing is that people were taught to be more responsible. I could probably explain it that way because, you know, I would say people were probably a little less sissy. I could probably call it that. Well, in the sense of, I mean, not being lazy. You know, well, I think that's what the word I could use instead of sissy. But I think lazy. I think people were forced to get up and go, forced to get up. So it was better on the aspect where people were forced to get up and go do something or go out and play games. So it was better for the mind, I would say. I mean, it was better for our minds and our emotional well-being, I guess I could say. I mean, it was better on that part. And then, well, I think that's basically it right there. And then, of course, was it better? Was life better in the 80s? Well, maybe back in the time, life was a little better in just the aspect of people, basically. I mean, people were more friendlier. People were more friendlier and more laid back. I mean, so, I mean, I would say, but of course, we did have some trolls out in the 80s too, but I mean it's like, but the thing was, I mean, it was less crowded though. I mean, it was a little less crowded, and the laws were a little bit more lenient back then. You know, they weren't such an ass. You know, the tickets were not so expensive, or they did not kill you on the tickets whenever you had, you know, things like that. Like when it came to things like that, you know. Because for the example of the tickets, you know, like a speeding ticket back then was, I mean, a 10 miles an hour over the speed limit used to be $25, and then 20 miles an hour. It used to be like 75, you know. It used to be 75, and you were able to go to traffic school once a year. But now, and then back then, you know, you were able to, you did not have to pay the ticket. You just had to pay the $25 fee to go to traffic school if you qualified. But now today in 2019, from the last time I heard, I think traffic school is how much now? How much is traffic school these days? What, like maybe $75, $100? Maybe I'm guessing on that. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been there in a long time, but I do know that the price of a ticket is a lot more expensive now. I mean, for an example, getting a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, I don't know much. But the last time, you know, I heard, I think the last time I heard it was like $200 for a typical 10, 15 mile an hour speed limit, you know, like over the speed limit ticket. But anyway, so, I mean, and then if I could say what was better, if it was better, I mean, that's about it. I mean, it's people and their attitudes. I mean, that's what, I mean, life was better when it came to that, I would say. I mean, but was life truly better in the 80s on the other aspects of life? I mean, like the electronics and, yeah, I mean, it's like life was more convenient. Life is more convenient today. Very convenient today. I mean, it's like back then, you know, everything, we had to do everything manually. Like, we had to, like, mail our bills. I mean, so, I mean, we lived with it, you know, I mean, we lived by that. I mean, you mailed our bills or what else? I mean, we did everything manually, you know, like we go to for the jobs, we go out and fill out a paper application. And if you were looking for jobs, we would look on the newspaper and things like, we did everything manually, you know, we did everything manually back then. So was life better on that part? Well, I mean, it depends on how you say it, but, you know, to do everything manual, we were still able to do everything. We were still able to live. So, I mean, I would say, I mean, it was just, life was about, I mean, life is just more convenient today. I mean, it was not necessarily better. Life was not necessarily better on that part, on that aspect of life of the 80s, like the technology, like we just had to do everything manually, that's all. I mean, the phones, I mean, we had to, like if we had a car breakdown, we had to go to the call boxes, or we had to go to the call boxes, but we were still able to do everything, though. I mean, it was just, today it's just a lot more convenient, you know, it's just, so was life better than, I mean, than today? Well, maybe it was not better, it was just more convenient today. Today is just more convenient. I mean, it was less convenient. The life in the 80s on that part was less convenient. It's pretty much it, because we did everything. We still did everything, you know. We did everything still. I mean, we were still able to do everything, you know. I mean, but we just had to do everything manually, you know. That's all. I mean, so I want to get the answer to that question. I think it was just, I mean, it was just convenient. I mean, so overall, I think life was probably, I mean, is it better? I mean, it's less, I mean, in the 80s, it's less, I mean, how we call it, you know, complicated, you know, things are less complicated, you know, back then. So, I mean, that's what was better about it. Although we had to do everything manually, but everything was less complicated to do back then, because, like, with today's technology, we have all the convenience of, you know, like bill paying and, well, everything. But of course, all that comes the complicated, you know, parts of life, like, you know, like being able to do everything, like, and then of course people are more complicated, you know, like with politics and there today. I mean, today, but well, because since we have the internet, I mean, everything, like, I mean, it's like a lot of things to know. It's a lot of things to get from the internet. But back then, when we didn't have internet, our minds are at ease, where we weren't overflooded with so many things to get from the internet, you know, like we had to just chill, you know. We just had to go to our book or go to the library or so, or just chill in our mind. It's nothing we don't have too much in our mind, you know. Like since the internet is has so much stuff on the internet, we get overwhelmed on where to look and everything. But in the 80s, it was less complicated, you know. So I would say, I mean, was life better in the 80s as compared to today? I mean, better. I mean, I could probably safely say, yeah, because I mean, it was less complicated, more simpler, you know, like everybody says, you know. Life was more simpler, but although like life today is more convenient with the internet and paying bills, but in the 80s we just had to do everything manually, you know. And I mean, it was better. I mean, I would say it was better. Life was better in the 80s in that aspect because it was more simpler, like like you guys say. I mean, in today's technology, we get overwhelmed by all the technology, you know. We're overwhelmed by, I mean, although, I mean, if we take it easy on it, we're okay. It's convenient. Today's technology is convenient, but I mean, we're careful not to overwhelm ourselves with everything that's available of today. So I would say overall, life was better in the 80s because it was more simpler, less to put in our minds, you know, with all the passwords, internet passwords, and forgetting these stupid passwords, or computers that freeze, or phones that break, and you lost all your files, you know, all this shit, you know, like all of the shit with today's, if we're not careful. But back in the 80s, we didn't have all this password stuff, and we didn't have all the Wi-Fi that would break down on us all the time, and we didn't have all the complicated stuff, you know, about today's technology, you know. Like we didn't have all these, you know, like we always get this situation where like our computer working good one day, and then next thing you know, it's just acting stupid the next day. I mean, and then it's a piss off. When one day like the phone is working good, or the computer or whatever is working good, and then next thing you know, it's acting like an ass, you know, acting stupid, and then you have to reboot it, or I mean, and then all the hassle with passwords. That's today. But back in the 80s, we didn't have all that stuff. We didn't have all this stupid internet and stuff that would break down, or computers that freezes up, or you know, all the shit that breaks, like, and it's complicated to get it going again, you know. So life was better. I would say life was better for our minds, you know. It's less complicated, you know. So that's what I would have to say about today compared to, I mean, what I have to say about the 80s. So for the win, I mean, do I miss the 80s? I would say not exactly. I mean, I would not necessarily want to go back to the 80s because I like today's convenience of technology and the wages and all that stuff. But was life better in the 80s? I say it was because like I say, it was more simpler, and it's less to overwhelm our minds with technology, you know, and social media and all the politics on the social media and stuff, you know, phones and all the stuff with today's phone, you know. I mean, it's better. It was more simpler, and our minds was more at ease during the 80s decade. In the 80s decade. So I would say life was better. I know I probably said that quadzillion times, but I mean, that's what I would have to say overall. So the grand overall, that's the answer to what I would think. To the most common thing that I see, the most common comment that I get on the internet about life being better, and then if and this is me chiming in if it really was better or not, and I would say, I mean, that's what I would have to all say. Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna conclude with this video, and I hope you liked this one. So I mean, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and go. I have to go back to the apartment and everything. So I hope you have a good one, and Stay tuned for any more new videos that I might post up. Okay.